greetings my guzzlers. We're going to make some snickerdoodles. I've never had a snickerdoodle. It's not a snicker, or rather it's not anything based on what we in England have as called a snicker, which used to be a marathon bar, and then they decided to call it Snickers. Nothing to do with that anyway. A snickerdoodle is a type of cookie, and it's a type of cookie made with flour, fat, sugar and salt, and sometimes might have egg in it. Well, ours has got egg in it anyway. And it traditionally would have cream of tartar and baking soda. We're substituting baking powder, which you can do. I've got cream of tartar somewhere and I can't find it in my cupboard. If you're going to substitute baking powder like we are, use 1.5 times the amount of cream of tartar that you're going to use. Okay. Now, the original recipe I found is for, actually for chocolate snickerdoodles, and it's for making 16. I'm going to double that because I'm a generous person. I want to give some away. So 16 they ain't going to get given away because I'll be eating them all. So we're going to make some chocolate snickerdoodles. In my final sort of mixing bowl, as it were, I'm going to add some granulated sugar, and I've got 200 grams of that. I've got some cocoa powder. I've got 42 grams of that, and then I've got some melted and cooled slightly so it's not still hot. I put this in the oven and then forgot, and when I went to get it out, it was all right, but it was boom. So I've let that cool down a bit, and I've got 226 grams of that. So that's going to go in there, and then we're just going to mix all that together. So a traditional snickerdoodle didn't necessarily have chocolate in it, but these are chocolate ones, like I said. Now I've never made them before, so it would be interesting to see if it works. But a snickerdoodle normally has like a cracked, apparently, surface, and it can either be crisp or soft depending on what you put in it. I'm not quite sure whether that makes a difference, whether it's the egg or what it is. Now, the very original ones would have used shortening, so like a form of fat. Nowadays people tend to use oil, and we're using oil. Okay, so I think that's just about all combined. And so now we're going to need some vanilla extract and 2 eggs. Vanilla extract, I want 2 tablespoons. Yeah, 2 tablespoons of vanilla extract. That's quite a lot of vanilla extract, isn't it? They're sometimes also called sugar cookies. I've made sugar cookies before, a little while ago, so you can look that one up if you want. Although they weren't chocolate. And then, like I say, we're also going to put 2 eggs into it. Well, I follow a channel, actually, I must admit I haven't used it much lately. A guy who did a lot of, I think, chocolate somewhere, I can't remember, or cocoa, I can't remember. I think I just got a bit of shell in there. Whew, that took some doing. The bloody stuff kept trying to sink in the bottom. Right, so we're just going to beat that egg in. Now, I'm saying about this guy who would make all these different sort of chocolate things, some really nice ones. I've tried some of these things before, but it's been a long time. And lately I haven't really seen anything that's caught my eye. There's a few old ones I still want to do. But anyway, going back to the eggs. He used to always draw little faces on his eggs before he smashed their eggs in and break them into everything. So I'm using my trusty Guzzling Gourmet fruit spoon. Another little shout out to Mr. and Mrs. J. So that's beaten that in there. Now we're going to add the dry ingredients. Now what we've got here is some salt, some cinnamon, and the baking powder. If you're using cream of tartar, For the quantities that we were doing, you would add 2 teaspoons of cream of tartar, and you would add 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And I've just realised that when I doubled up my quantities, I didn't double up correctly. I need to get a bit more baking powder out. I said you use 1.5 times, and so because I would be using 2 teaspoons of whatever, I needed 3.5 teaspoons of baking powder, so I'll sprinkle that in there. Cinnamon, I've got 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, and salt, I've got 1.5 teaspoons of salt. And then here I've just got some plain flour, or as you Americans call it, all-purpose flour. How much of that have I got? 312 grams. So I'm just going to put that into there. And then we just want, you can do this in a mixer, you don't have to do it by hand. We now just want to make sure this is all thoroughly mixed together. Good thing of adding that white flour to that chocolate mix is you can see when you haven't actually combined all your flour. So it'd be quite a stiff mixture in your stand mixer, I tell you. And this, to be honest, if you use the original quantity for 16, I don't think you'd be wanting to use a stand mixer because it'd get a bit lost in there. It possibly wouldn't mix properly, because I think in my one, even this would be a bit of a struggle. Now I've got my oven on preheated to 170 fan, okay, and I've got some silicone mats on some baking trays which I just put out of sight a minute. Now, traditional sugar cookies would be rolled in sugar before you bake them. The Snickerdoodles are rolled in cinnamon sugar. So over here I've got some granulated sugar, ratio of 2 teaspoons of cinnamon to 50 grams of granulated sugar. Okay, so we'll be mixing that shortly, because we're going to make about teaspoon sized balls. Is it teaspoons or tablespoons? Tablespoons, sorry, sized balls. 1 to 1.5 tablespoon sized balls of this dough, rolling it into a ball, rolling it in the sugar, and then placing it on the tray. Now these will then flatten as they cook, and so you need apparently to leave at least 3 to 4 inches. Just check see if there's any flour on the bottom, and there was a little bit. You're going to need to leave at least 3 to 4 inches between them. If you like your cinnamon, you can actually do a ratio of 1 to 1 for cinnamon sugar, but we ain't going to make it quite that cinnamony. That cinnamon is going to go into that sugar. I'm just going to mix it together. Now, the Joy of Cooking claims that Snickerdoodles are probably German in origin, and the name is a corruption of a German word, Schneckennoodle. It's also possible the name is a nonsense word, you know, like some words are, just complete random inventions, from a New England tradition of just creating odd names for cookies. Oxford English Dictionary, on the other hand, claims a word is uncertain in its origin and is possibly a portmanteau of the word schnicker, which is an imitative English word, apparently, with Scottish roots, that indicates a smothered laugh. A snigger. A bit like a snigger, I suppose we would call it. And the word doodle, which is a German loan word into the English, meaning a simple or foolish fellow. The earliest recorded reference to the word Snickerdoodle in the Oxford English Dictionary is apparently in 1889. So I think we are just about there. So this is where it's going to get messy. So like I say, what we're going to do is we're going to take about a tablespoon. I'll use that spoon there. We're going to take about a tablespoonful, and I do tend to be a little bit generous. Okay, it's very, very soft. Toss it in that, and then, like I say, you need to create plenty of room around it. So it's just going to be a matter of probably doing these in batches, because I can't put too many on there at a time, remember, so we need room for it to spread. And I'm hoping we get about 32 out of this. By the time I've done my second tray, we'll probably realise I made these way too big and I've got nowhere near that many. But there we go. I'm just going to carry on like that, and then once I've got the tray ready, it goes into the oven for about 9 to 11 minutes. You basically want the edges to start obviously actually firming up and cooking, and then we bring it out and leave it on the sheet for another 5 minutes before we transfer it to wire rack. So I've taken my first batch out. I gave them 11 minutes. They should cook between 9 and 11 minutes, and I brought these out. Now, interestingly, I've got an aluminium Nordic ware pan, and that was in at the same time as those were. These came out, they're a little bit soft, but that's how you want them. But strangely, the Nordic ware ones, whether it was just coincidence it was that, or whether it was just a position in the oven, but they were a bit more soft. They were softer. That's probably better English, isn't it? So I've given them a couple more minutes, but these are still cooling. We'll let them cool properly. They have a little sparkle to them from that sugar. They're sort of, the bottoms are a little bit soft, but they are beginning to, I wouldn't say harden up, but they're not as soft now as they're cooling. Just a few more little interesting things. I've got a little bit more in there to do. Looking at that, I'm probably going to getting close to 32 out of it. Apparently these are very common, the Snickerdoodle that is, to the Mennonites and the Amish communities. And although I've never heard of him, possibly it's because it's an American thing, I don't know, but they were the favourite treat of the Indiana poet James Whitcomb Riley, whoever he was. But like I say, he might be someone famous, but I don't know. More recent times, Snickerdoodle has been sort of adapted into things like sugary sweets, candies. Dunkin' Donuts at one point launched a Snickerdoodle cookie latte during the holiday seasons, in addition to a general Snickerdoodle latte. I can't see what the difference is, but there you go. Nestle, Coffee Mate, introduced their flavoured cookie in terms of Snickerdoodle flavour in terms of a coffee creamer. There you go. So I'm just going to get the rest of these baked, and then we're going to have to eat one, aren't we? Can't give them to people if you don't know what they taste like, can you? Okay, so actually I've got more than 32 out. Although there was one batch near the end. I don't know whether it's because this was sitting there for ages or whether it just wasn't mixed right. But they sort of went a bit funny when they cooked. And obviously the cinder edge looks like it's burnt a little bit. I don't know, like I say, whether it was simply it weren't fully mixed or it was just a thing to do with standing. So anyway, I won't eat that bit because it looks a bit black. Let's try this though. Nice crisp top. The bottom isn't so crisp. but chocolatey. Soft. If you prefer your cookies a little harder, cook them a bit longer. But they're a little bit reminiscent of like chocolate cake. It's going a bit, well, I say stale, that makes it sound like it's not quite right, but what I mean is chocolate cake that's sort of drying out a little bit. But perfect chocolate snickerdoodles.